Jim clap one time. All right. Hey there, Jim Davis.
Hey,
Hey,
disembodied
Jonathan
voice.
Hey, disembodied voice from somewhere in the building.
It's time to roll the big D20.
Oh, snap!
So it's come to this, has
It's
it?
come to this. Out of ideas, we turn to our fan base for help.
WebDM was closed off from their own idea space. The muse refused to descend.
Until he rolled the big D20. What do we got? That's crooked die.
It's a crooked die, but it was an 18.
Kind of on an 18.
It was an 18. 18, Trav.
All right, so we put it to the fans out there on Facebook. Problems with thrown weapons support.
Oh, God.
Oh, my.
Jeez, they can't even get a feat?
They can't even get a fucking feat. Can we at least have something to allow daggers to just be considered ranged weapons? Like, they have the thrown property. You
Okay.
can use strength or dex. That's fine.
Okay.
But let me use sharpshooter with my fucking dagger. Let me make a fighter. Like, I mean, I guess it would only take for me a subclass called the thrower. And the first ability you get.
I mean, can't you do some of that with Battlemaster, though? Like, aren't some of the Battlemaster's maneuvers usable with thrown weapons?
So, some of them, but a lot of them, I believe, say a melee attack.
They're briefly with the first draft of the Blade Bard, not the newest one they released like last week, the updated one.
Yeah, it was
First
College of
draft of
Sword.
College of Swords, the Blade Bard had there was like one option for like throwing daggers that did something, and maybe it's still in there. So that's it. Some Battlemaster maneuver, that's the current support for throwing weapons.
Yeah.
So you would go all ranged, that they're just all ranged weapons.
I would make it where there's a subclass that treats daggers as a ranged weapon
Gotcha,
for the
okay.
purposes of this class. But they are still melee weapons. So if you wanted to, you could take two-weapon fighting, be able to throw two, but you could also use the sharpshooter feat.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And that to me, that's the easiest fix, is in a subclass. You just have it where they can be treated. I mean, if a monk can treat other weapons as monk weapons.
Right.
And you can use either your monk damage or that weapon.
Or that weapon's damage,
right?
correct, yeah.
Well, why can't a fighter be able to use a dagger as a melee weapon or a ranged weapon and use
the throwing
full...
master. I'll let you design that class.
Well, we should
can have that
We
class.
should, because I want to make Jarek Reynolds again.
I would just say, if you wanted to make Jarek Reynolds at my table, I'd just be like, listen, you can draw ammunition as part of the attack with my bow, right? Why can't you, as part of your attack, draw ammunition out of your throwing dagger? So I don't think that adding the ammunition property to throwing daggers is the way to go. I think this is the table rule. Yes, you can do it. If you're a fighter, that means you're getting your full attacks. Maybe you're a monk throwing guy and you're wanting to throw a bunch of like Chinese stars or ninja weapons or whatever they're called now. And that's how you want to do it. So I would say it's a part of the attack. What I love about throwing weapons now and why I like the fact that they're melee is that there is a very specialized build of paladin that throws their weapons and smites with them, and maybe you want to be a paladin that gets both a dwarven thrower and a hammer of thunderbolts, and they're constantly coming back to you. But official support for throw is minimal to none, and that's BS. And so you're going to have to work with your DM if you want to play a thrower, which is a legit and valid and awesome character concept.
Exactly. All right. Well, there's that. Jim, you want to take the next one?
Oh my God! All right. What do we got here? This is a 3. Three.
It's a combination of 3 and 5.
Repeat.
Sorry.
How would you DM with a great old one patron warlock? Fiend and Archfey have things they might want done in the mortal realm, but what would a GOO, a goo, really need or want some schmuck in the prime material to do?
It wants everyone to eat sushi on Tuesdays.
Why does that make any sense?
It doesn't have to. It wants everyone to wear a red left shoe.
Yeah.
What does it matter? Like, find something that you think is evocative of that great old one, and then that's what the warlock has to do. So you can either make it something that the warlock has to do, and so the warlock's just bizarre and strange. Maybe the great old one wants it to have a conversation with every creature. We're assuming that the great old one cares at all that a warlock is drawing power from. It might not even care. What does it care what a speck of dust halfway across the galaxy thinks about it?
Yeah. What does Cthulhu give a shit about?
Cthulhu's gonna wake up from his dreaming sleep and is gonna destroy the world and eat the sun and knock us off our axis and everything. Like, it doesn't care. But that person that's gonna connect with that great old one to draw power from it, the pact that it's making is dangerous and insane. And so the kinds of things that it's going to want you to do might make no sense whatsoever. Arranging every 7 rocks that you come across in a straight line that always points northeast is how Cthulhu has to wake up.
Yeah, when enough of those random occurrences in the universe line up,
right,
it opens the way for him to come from the
far realm maybe whatever bizarre random things you can kind of think of are the things that Great Cthulhu, viewing time as a whole tapestry at once, knows has to happen before he can be reborn.
I have one character that I've played that was a great Old One Warlock, at least multi-class, mostly Mystic, but it was when they only had 10 levels.
Right.
Monomaratatog.
I guess your Minotaur.
My Minotaur, the white bull, albino bull with red eyes, and his whole thing was he was basically like a missionary for his god, Brahmarat.
Yeah, Brahmarat. Yeah.
Because it's Brahma and Toro backwards put together.
Right.
But yeah, all he had to do was he went around from village to village, convincing everyone who was going to slaughter their cows for food, just to do this one little ritual.
Yeah.
And it might seem archaic and whatever. You got to take some blood and put a thing and say an incantation. Basically, he passed it off as like, it will placate the animal and the meat will be better. But really, it was just so that those cows can be sent off to Brahmarat's realm, because those cows are then elevated to the status of Minotaur and can be reborn back into the world as Minotaur instead of cows.
It was a very elaborate backstory, if I recall, but also very evocative.
But it allowed me a role-playing aspect. To interact with people and be weird. Like, here's this Minotaur wanting me to do this weird pagan ritual before I slaughter my cows and make them sacrifices.
Right.
But, hey.
Who cares?
Who cares?
In other terms, familiarizing yourself with the Call of Cthulhu and Lovecraft literature, if you're going to really want to dig deep into a great Old One Warlock, like what is Hastur doing? What is Cthulhu doing? What is Azathoth doing? Most of these entities either are utterly uninterested in what goes on in mortal affairs, and just their mere passing is calamitous to us, or they actively are seeking to subvert or destroy or cultivate cults, in which case, who knows what kind of bizarre things they're going to ask you to do. That's how I would run it.
Nice. There it is. All right.
A goo.
Goo. So Billy Madison, or no, that's where Happy Gilmore gets his. Oh my God, we rolled a 1. It can't be good to roll a 1 on a topic discussion.
It can't.
What do you feel are some of 5e's flaws or issues? I'd be interested to hear about issues or problems you perceive or experience with 5th edition in theory, conceptually, as well as in play mechanically, if you have any, and maybe any tweaks or home ruling you've done to address them.
How long do you want us to talk?
You have 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Jim, you want to start?
Yeah, I'd love to start. Okay, so I mean, I'd first like to acknowledge the success of 5th edition.
Yeah.
It is an edition people love, and it is an edition people get hyped about, and I think it's been great for the hobby overall. Overall, I find the game boring. That's probably, I've tried. From both player perspective and a DM perspective, I think there are a lot of nitty-gritty mechanical issues related to how monsters are designed, the relative power level of players or player characters versus monsters. It seems to be the expectation that the players will always succeed, which is what I find boring about it. There's not enough uncertainty, and that's when you're following the baseline rules in the DMG and in the times that I have tweaked those rules more to my liking. Usually what that does is by making monsters a bit more powerful and more versatile in what they can do. It's sort of like a greatest hits of D&D.
Yeah.
5th edition is, and it's got a little bit of everything, but I find that when I start to go homebrew and tweak around with 5th edition, I go, well, why don't I just play the edition of D&D that I really want to play?
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that I'm finding frustrating about 5th edition, because I want to like it, and I want to keep playing it. Not just because we have a channel about it and I want to be able to be informed when I talk, but because it's the edition people are playing.
Right.
And it's the
new hotness.
Yeah, and I'm like, yes, win me back over. You guys lost me with 4th, and I'm right here. Take my money. And I'm finding there's just something about it that's not quite scratching the D&D itch for me. And I could, like I said, I could go into nitty gritty about a lot of it. I don't think there's any one issue that does it. I think we've talked a bit about why the skill system could be revamped, and the way that monsters are designed, some of the stuff having to do with magic items and magic item creation. Those are all things, but none of those are game breaking, I guess. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
To me, once you get past first, second level, unless you do something just grossly incompetent, right?
Yeah.
It is very hard to die.
Yeah,
And that
so
goes to your point that
Yeah.
if there is no fear of death, because it's like, even if I try to go against slightly overwhelming odds, we can probably win, maybe a few people drop, but then they wake up an hour later, right?
Right.
Instead of like, you go in, you probably shouldn't have, a few people are gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, have we had anyone at our table die?
No, I mean, I've
we've
dropped you
started
guys.
playing 5th edition.
I've dropped you guys. A couple of you guys get to 0, and then either death saves are made, or the combat ends before it becomes an issue. But I don't think I've had anyone die in the way that we did in most of our 3rd edition games. Certainly the older editions that we did. And that's the thing for me is like I wonder. It's like, are the flaws user related? Not above thinking that the reason why 5th edition doesn't work for me is something about how I run.
Jim, you suck!
But I mean, it's impossible. It's
No, you
possible.
don't,
But at
no.
the same time, I when I play other games, I run them in the style that I'm used to and that I like, and I get a satisfying result. When I do that with 5th edition, I find that I'm running games where I'm having some kind of enjoyment, but there's something that's not being satisfied with it, and it's really difficult to put my finger on it.
I just wish there was, a little bit more edge to it, like
Yeah.
there was in, say, 2nd edition.
Yeah, I can
and
see
even
that.
to an extent, 3rd edition.
And lower levels of 3rd edition, certainly.
Longer for lower levels at 3rd edition, 1st through like 5th.
Yeah.
You still had, there was some harrowing times that you could have there.
I don't know. Maybe we'll expand this into a greater topic where we can go by point and kind of give some examples. But thumbnail sketch, kind of a
And
it's a
one,
B minus.
and one last question on that subject of characters dying. Do you think it has, or have you noticed it changing how we play D&D?
Oh yeah. You guys have gotten a lot less cautious, a lot more gung ho about. And I think if we were to switch back to an older version of D&D, there would be a relearning curve.
Yeah.
Where it's like, wait a second, we can't just charge in. We can't just throw caution to the wind.
I wholeheartly agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Beep, beep.
We still have 4 seconds. Sorry, Jim.
All right, here we go.
Oh man. 8.
8. This is a plushie.
How does a high fantasy RPG setting change after firearms are introduced? What are the benefits and drawbacks of some schmuck inventing the first gun?
Well, first, obviously not a gun lover.
I think that D&D's combat system is sufficiently abstract that guns don't need any special rules than what ranged weapons normally have. I don't even think they need to necessarily do more damage.
No.
They just accept the fact that nothing about D&D combat is meant to be realistic or carry any kind of fidelity to the real world.
Right.
And yet, when guns come out, there's all of a sudden these other subtables and exploding die and this, that. You're just like, maybe give them 1 die step more than crossbows do if you wanted to.
Yeah. And if you want to put a drawback, hey, guess what happens when you roll a 1?
And maybe
It might not be pretty.
It might not be pretty. Maybe you take that damage. If you want some kind of drawback, I kind of think that the drawback should be they just take a long time to reload, particularly if we're talking about like first invented. I have a burning piece of cord that gets touched to the powder can, and not like
The powder tray.
the powder tray that it sits in, and not like even flintlock or later style weapons. Because I find when most people are talking about like firearms in D&D, they're talking about firearms that were not around when longswords and plate armor and battle axes were used.
Oh, you mean the dwarf that invents the 6-shot revolver as the
Right.
first firearm?
Right, as the first firearm.
Yeah, that's the way that happens.
So yes, there were duck feet firearms, and I've played Warhammer. It's my favorite RPG in the world. Second favorite RPG in the world. And third favorite RPG in the world. It's top 3.
Top 3.
Listen.
That's all that matters.
Good grief. So how would it impact the setting? Depending on how you've arranged mass warfare in the setting, you might see similar changes like we did in our world, in which case it's very easy to put an untrained militiaman on the field with a gun and have them fire. However, I don't think that's how warfare would adapt in D&D worlds because there are fireballs. And I think bunching up would be a really bad idea.
Well,
so you might have sharpshooters. You might have people who are patient and skillful enough with a very well-crafted firearm that they are able to hide in a bush and shoot someone with it.
right. Quote their scripture before firing off shots.
Right. You can imagine that the authorities are going to feel similarly about firearms as they would about, say, crossbows, in which they might try to outlaw them. There might be certain gods that ban their use, if you wanted to kind of go in that. High fantasy, I always define as the gods are really involved in the world.
Well, yeah, at some point they send their avatars down and interact with the world. I mean, they actually...
Yeah, is there a deity claiming to be the source of inspiration for this thing? So if we're talking like Forgotten Realms, then maybe it's Gond and the Priest of Lantan. I think those are the names of that island that mentioned smoke powder.
Yeah, he gave smoke powder to the priests of Gond.
But I think overall the high fantasy setting is better served by having guns. They unlock sort of more concepts that you can use. It's kind of hard to do like a swashbuckling pirate game without guns.
Without a pistol to fire off?
There's just the hand crossbow just doesn't cut it. And in a lot of cases, the hand crossbow is just a stand-in for a pistol.
Yeah.
That if you changed nothing other than just like it was a hand crossbow, now I'm calling it my wheel lock pistol. You don't change the damage, you don't change the rules for it. It's just my wheel lock pistol. Then I find that that's probably perfectly acceptable. And the changes that you would see in society would be slow, so you might start adapting. Like maybe people, even though game mechanically there might not be any reason, maybe say, well, people started wearing less armor now as a response to it, or people frown upon its use and sort of seen as a criminal's weapon, or something like that. I imagine, how do they feel about the fact that there are now powder kegs? And that the destruction
warehouse over there.
Yeah, I would imagine that you could see like wizards and sorcerers and things being particularly opposed to it because it's like their monopoly on mass destructive power is now over, and so we only have a couple more seconds to answer this question. This is a big question. Firearms.
Answer the question.
You answer the question. Is there artillery? Are there cannons and mortars and shit now? That's another even bigger one. Personally,
Might have to bump this over to the full show.
Oh my God!
Wow,
A gun show would be fun.
A gun show would be very fun.
Sunday.
This gun show.
Yeah, sale on buy one get one free.
You gotta re-roll this.
No.
This die is so. This plushy die is so unbalanced.
Did you roll
6. It was a 1, and it like literally just like was like 6.
Pruitt rolled a 6.
We're gonna need some double digits up in here.
I want to play a gnome that puts on a combat suit. I had the idea to reskin the druid somehow to keep it balanced, but I'm struggling with the details. How would you do it?
First off, awesome idea.
Tony Stark is a gnome.
Yeah. So
like gets in his suit.
Here's how I would do it. I mean, first off, I might be like, hey DM, when I'm in my combat suit, I'm like a warforged. But then I step out of it and I'm a gnome. And so like for social encounters, things like that, you get to use a gnome stats. But when you're in combat, you use like a warforged. That's might be how I do it. I like the idea. That's a clever idea of using like the moon druid.
Well, like a shifter druid, you have this form, and once it's destroyed, you're
combat
back to your
suit,
own.
yeah, or suit something. So either find another race that kind of fits in, that maybe bugbear or something. If you want to be really physical about it, and depending on what your DM is, you might be like, hey, I've got the mental stats of a gnome, but the physical stats of a bugbear. I don't know that they'd let you get away with that kind of. Two races one you're in like in social encounters and downtime, and when you're out in the field, these are the other stats that you use.
An alternate version of the artificer instead of the alchemy or the gunslinger or whatever it is. I don't know if you call it power suit or inventor or whatever, and you start with a baseline model.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It gives you a little bit bonus to your AC, a little bit bonus to your strength, or whatever, and then as you level up, you add things to it. So you add a thing to shoot a thing, you add a thing that maybe gives you jump or fly eventually or whatever, but it becomes that where you're constantly tinkering with this
Constantly
thing.
tinkering with that
and,
thing,
And
yeah.
making it better, but, and just, that's, of course, that's inventing a subclass from a UA class.
I mean, come on. By this point, the concept deserves that kind of level of attention to detail.
But I don't see why you couldn't. I mean, or maybe you forego whatever it is, the companion that they get.
Right.
And it's your suit.
That's your suit instead. Yeah, I guess, like, what kind of power suit or armor or form are you wanting to take? What are you trying to accomplish with it? Are you trying to be a blaster, a bruiser? Is it a stealth form, a travel form? What are you trying to do with it? Of course, Moon Druid, you get all those except for blaster.
Right.
But I like that. It's a clever idea. I think I'd probably do a combination of 2 races and Moon Druid and just reskin the hell out of everything. Maybe even let you pick different spells, like if you were really committed to the idea. 6.
Let's just
It's time to re-roll.
6. Oh, wait a
We
minute.
can round up.
Wait a minute.
We can round up.
3. 3. I didn't roll a third 6.
How would you run a Dragonlance campaign? Would you adjust the storyline or setting? How would you work beyond the romanticism of the setting that is often criticized? Would they ignore some of the later novels and their storylines, or set it well into the future?
You mean once it got like insanely convoluted?
It's something that convoluted. So first off, by way of just establishing it, Dragonlance, obviously a series of novels, but there were a series of adventures based on those novels. I might be getting it wrong, and one preceded the other, but that's fine. I wasn't there. And I own a couple of those modules. They're very good. So the modules are notorious for brutally murdering you without any recourse if you go off script, and otherwise giving you complete plot immunity. Because you are playing your Tanis and River Moon Wind song and Sturm and Tika. Here's how I would do it. I would remove the rails entirely, right? I might have the first adventure, you guys are in Solace. Just like living it up in the high fantasy kumbaya world that is Dragonlance. And then the dragons attack, and it is terrifying. And they have those draconian adversaries, and there are hobgoblins, and there are dragons burning down the countryside. And then your players have some choices, right? They've got some hard choices. Are they going to try to run from those dragons? They could seek refuge with the elves, but the elves kill people on sight. They are elves, and they keep everyone out of their forest. So you've either got to somehow find a way to work with those elves. You could collaborate with the draconic allies because, hey, you want your family to live, right? They captured your women, they captured your children. They're in that cave with that one red dragon that has all the kids, right? And do you collaborate? Do you say like, hey, hobgoblins, that's fine, I'll join your militia. And you know what? I will search for those 2 barbarians that are looking for that staff. I have no problem doing that. I would just completely remove the rails, and whatever happened in those opening moments of the campaign when the idyllic high fantasy world of Dragonlance is subjected to a dragon war, and then just let that kind of play out, because the PCs don't have dragons. They're not anybody. There's no clerics.
Nope.
And you maybe you're one of the wizards of high sorcery, but maybe you're not, and you're just regular people. I also probably wouldn't let them play the actual characters from the Dragonlance novels.
Yeah, maybe you haven't taken your test yet.
Yeah, you haven't taken your test yet, or you just took it and got back from it, or something like that. I can't remember if White Wizards there had healing magic or not. That's something. I'd probably also make new subclasses for the wizards in that setting. But that's how I do it. Remove the rails entirely, let the consequences fall where they may, and really play up the fact that this is a dragon war, and it would be horrifying for the people that were involved in it.
Do you think that that's what Wizards of the Coast was trying to do with Rise of Tiamat and Horde of the Dragon Queen? Just give that feel of Dragonlance? There's
certainly a feel for it that way, and that's how I ended up running the rest of Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat. I think that they hint at it, and certainly Greenest in those opening moments is subjected to one of these dragon attacks, and if the heroes aren't there, it would be really bad for Greenest. But then I think it goes off on this weird thing about finding the Horde and where it's going to go, and then when you get to Rise of Tiamat, fighting against the speakers and getting the masks, and you don't spend enough time in the countryside of Forgotten Realms and what it was like for them as they faced off against, say, a dozen red dragons that were waging war on the countryside. The Tyranny of Dragons storyline has a lot in common with the first couple of modules in the Dragonlance series, but after that it gets into, it's modern action D&D.
Yeah.
I would remove the romanticism with a knife.
Cut out its heart.
And cut out its heart, and I would introduce some hardcore, like Walking Dead style brutality to Dragonlance.
You got some hard choices to make, son.
Oh, so close, but
19.
a 19. Should have been a champion.
It's true.
Design a campaign that takes place entirely in the same tavern.
Oh, interesting.
Campaign that takes place in the same tavern.
Full campaign. Well, this is the way my mind works. I go, define campaign, but we don't have that much time.
But how big does the tavern really have to be?
It could be like one of these giant taverns in like Greyhawk or Waterdeep or Baldur's Gate. It's like multi-level, hundreds of people can fit in there.
But
maybe there's something
you
below
go
it.
down-
Yeah, there's cellars and sub-basements, and there's that one level where the cult set up last summer. And so you're easily looking at a 5 to 7 or 8 level mini dungeon.
Yeah.
In that respect, full of inhabitants, random encounters, potentially wandering monsters. Maybe there's a killer on the loose in the tavern, sort of like a clue set up. And you've arrived there. The killer's on their way. Who's the killer going to be? So you have a few adventures where you're trying to gather information. I can't imagine this particular campaign lasting that long.
it depends if you're doing a murder mystery.
If you're doing a
That's
murder
the thing, is
mystery,
if you're doing a murder mystery and you're staying at the end where the murder happens, you then do the clue thing. Lock the doors, nobody leaves.
if you loosen the restrictions a bit, it's got to take place in and around the same tavern, but you say like, okay, they can leave the tavern physically. The tavern is the centerpiece of the campaign.
Yeah.
Then I might do something like a Casablanca situation or Thronehold from Eberron, where the tavern is a neutral meeting ground for multiple parties that are trying to negotiate something. So there's this information gathering. There's typical spycraft stuff that you can do. There's assassinations. There's murders. There's, you're hiring out local magic users for spell casting. And so maybe the tavern is the centerpiece. There's the environs of the tavern. Maybe there's a courtyard or an inner, where they keep the horses or something, barn, stables, and then there's maybe some places around it that the players can leave. They can go visit this other place, but everything about the game sort of centers in the tavern. That's where they sleep, that's where they live, that's where they stay, that's where the main action happens, but occasionally they go out to other parts of the city. It's still an 8th level, cellars and basements and
Or,
attics and shit like that.
here's another idea.
Yeah.
What if you're in the tavern when a necromancer with his insane undead horde come rolling in, wipe out the whole town, except now you're in the Alamo.
Now you're in
And
the
you're
Alamo.
under siege.
Yes, okay. So then you got to fortify it. You've got to, and maybe this kind of campaign where like each session is a day, and that the campaign takes place over a number of days.
When do you start running out of food? When do you start running out of water?
Right.
How do you keep your defenses up? Once they start breaking them down, you have to build them back up. You're eventually going to start running out of
Right,
wood
start running
and
out of
furniture.
everything. Yeah, it was was the tavern particularly crowded when the undead army came in? What are you going to do about the ghosts? That might be one. Yeah, there's a lot of cool things you could do with like a tavern where it's under siege. It's called railroading. It's another 19. 10.
A 10!
10.
A 10!
How would you go about making a monster that could fight a group of 10 people?
So if I get this right, how can you make one monster that can fight 10 people, thus creating a monster that can fight and hold its own in the action economy of D&D? Okay, well,
I give it 10 attacks.
yeah.
and as many legendary actions as there are PCs in the party.
Like a monster that literally, like, when it fights
monster just-
somebody, however many opponents it fights, it has that many legendary actions?
Yeah. I mean, if we're designing a monster from the ground up, I would probably, what CR? Because my mind goes, well, Tiamat could do it right now.
Yeah.
Tiamat's a nasty monster. It's probably the only CR 30 monster worth its CR.
Yeah.
I think it's CR 30.
Glad we didn't let that bitch out.
Yeah, that's true. It
was close, though.
It'd be rough. But there are groups that have done it, that have beaten Tiamat in legit fights. In all seriousness, I would give it this is a vague answer. You're going to hate me for this. I would give it the armor class and hit points that it needs and enough actions to threaten the party meaningfully, including abilities that allow it to be mobile, enough immunities that common PC tactics aren't going to just completely shut it down. So it's going to have some kind of ability to withstand, say, a monk trying to stun lock it.
Yeah.
or being shunted into a force cage while the rest of the party peppers it with spells and arrows. Definitely, I would, baseline's going to be immune to magic, or not going to be immune to non-magic weapons, probably resistant to magic weapons. Probably magic resistance, legendary resistance, some ability that allows it to potentially teleport as a bonus action or a legendary action. Reach, meaningful attacks. Any one attack from it should be serious enough that it's the party feels threatened. But if that all 10 attacks go towards one character,
He's
it's
probably
not
dead.
Probably dead. Unless they're like a barbarian or a fighter or something, paladin. That's where I would start. I'd give it some kind of automatic damage aura, so that if you get within, say, 40 feet of it, that it kicks in. Maybe a save, maybe no save. If it is a save, I'd target something. I'd try to target something that didn't have a lot of strong saves associated with it. So not Dex or Wisdom, maybe Con.
Con, yeah.
Maybe Con.
Like a
something
poison
that.
aura or something like
Charisma
that?
and have it be like psychic damage.
Yeah.
That's where I would start, and then I would give. I'd have every attack of it have riders, like things that move around the party, things that inflict conditions on the party, just so that try to tie up as many PCs in undoing its action, the effects of its actions. Because they're casting a lesser restoration, doing an emergency heal, something like that. Keep the support players focused entirely on support, so that they can't then lend their weight to the fight against it.
Sounds to me like a beefed up Hydra. It has
Definitely
like
be
7 heads.
Tiamat.
Yeah, it's true. Like 7, 8 heads. Each of them have a different kind of attack, stun, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's got, maybe it even has like a split tail, so it has 2 attacks from that.
Yeah, we've kept it vague because all these principles apply. Most of these principles apply to low CR monsters that are meant to, threaten a first level party or a second level party as they would a 20th level. So that's it.
All right, here we go. We're going to do the lightning round. I want an interesting combo of race, background, and class from each of you. Interesting character creation combos of race, background, and class.
Oh, jeez. A noble rock gnome barbarian.
It might be cheap because we just did this in a one shot, but I'm fucking loving it, and it's got to be a Kinku warlock of the Raven Queen with the what background did I take?
Charlatan. Yeah.
Yeah.
My guy's he's a dispossessed gnomish aristocrat who got kicked out early on and had to learn to live in the hills by himself, and taps into his inner anger.
Yeah. Mine is just a reference from Edgar Allan Poe. His name is Poe of Nevermore. And he worries about death and makes sure everybody dies at the right time.
The right time. Anything else in the lightning round? Durr.
Hey, Pruitt, is Judge Dredd lawful evil?
No, I would say Judge Dredd is lawful neutral. It is about the law.
The law.
No one is above the law. He is the law, right? He's lawful neutral at AF.